Just today, ITV confirmed it will be hosting that first debate of the campaign between Sunak and Starmer next Tuesday. The two are hardly known for their charisma, so it'll be interesting to see how much character will be on display. But one man might have a better idea than most of us. I'm joined by a man who knows more than most about public speaking. He's trained the likes of Michael Gove, Sajid Javid and Kemi Badenoch, the political presentation coach Graham Davies. Well, Graham, thank you so much for joining us in the studio. I suppose a lot of people, when they think about political presentation, they think of the past masters. People like Tony Blair would be generally considered to be a gifted communicator. I think a lot of people would ask the question, who's at the top of their game today?
There's an interesting contrast between Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, and I have to say, David Cameron, because he was a political presentation performer on a par with Tony Blair. And actually, some of the performances that David Cameron has put in on television and on video, where he does that amazing thing that only experienced TV presenters can normally do, of talking and walking to camera, it showed that really he was one of the outstanding presentational polymaths of politics. And Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak are quite significantly below that, I would say.
Do you think that's just experience? David Cameron was leader of the opposition for 5 years before he was Prime Minister, and then Prime Minister for 6 years. He's been in the game, he's worked through that experience, or is it something natural?
I think that presentation, public speaking, is not necessarily something natural that people are born with. It's not a science either, and it's not an art. I see it as a sport. It's a highly adrenalised activity that takes place in front of an audience, but you only get really good at it if you learn some specific techniques and you rehearse those techniques under pressure, hopefully with a coach.
Brilliant. Well, let's get into some of those techniques now. I want to show you a clip of Keir Starmer speaking earlier today, and we're going to have a look at his hand movements.
Which is nearly 8 million on the waiting list. This is shocking, by the way. It's never been that high. And certainly in the hospital where my wife works, it's bearing down on the staff because every day they're concerned about the fact that they, in a sense, can't get on with the day job because the backlog...
So there he is. He was bearing down on the staff and sort of crunching his hands together. He's almost showing the words that he's speaking. Is that a good thing to do?
Well, he looks a bit choreographed when he's done that, because you have to remember that he was a criminal barrister. And criminal barristers tend to be a little bit stiff in their presentation. I should know because I was one myself for 12 years. Stiffness was my stock in trade. And so he's trying to break out of that stiff mode when he's talking politically, especially when he's doing it in the shouting match known as Prime Minister's Question Time. I have to say that it doesn't really enhance his rather stiff image when he does the occasional gesture which looks as if he's been told to do it.
Right, so because it's less fluid, it's more jerky, it perhaps comes across as less natural. Well, let's have a look at the Prime Minister as well. This was the Prime Minister attempting to be quite friendly with voters earlier today.
Get the healthcare that you need. I love the NHS. I'm from an NHS family. My dad was a GP, my mum was a pharmacist, and I've worked incredibly hard to get the waiting list down.
He's almost clutching his hands together towards his heart when he says, I love the NHS, I'm from an NHS family, my dad was a GP. I suppose he's trying to be meaningful there.
He's trying to be meaningful, and he's trying to make every word and every sentence more important than the one before. And sometimes he tries too hard and it comes across as being too earnest. You'll notice also in that speech that actually if we did listen to the words, you'd find that he's actually relying on some old phrases. I wonder if there's anybody in the country who doesn't know that his dad was a GP and his mother was a pharmacist. At the moment, what he lacks is probably not enough new ways of phrasing old ideas. He's going back to stock phrases, and it's not long before he always starts talking about delivering for the British people.
Although a lot of politicians would say it's that repetition of messages that they have to use to get through into people's heads, but some do it better than others.
Well, of course, if you listen to the Linton Crosby view from about 7 or 8 years ago, he would say that about the time that professional journalists and professional coaches are getting tired of a particular wording, that's the time when the general public are only beginning to absorb it for the first time. But I think that actually, because of the preponderance of TV stations now and social media, we're getting a bit wise to that and getting bored more quickly. We live in the ADHD generation.
The strong and stable government trap that Theresa May fell into. Well, shall we have a look at someone else? This is a rather old video of Nigel Farage in the European Parliament.
No way of filtering out extremists in favour of people fleeing in genuine fear of their lives. And as such...
There's a certain passion to the way he's speaking there, but just one sort of rather jerky hand movement.
Well, he recently described both Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak as essentially middle managers. You'd never accuse Nigel Farage of that. He's a cabaret man, and you can tell that he enjoys the whiff of grease paint and the smell of gunpowder. I think that when he has passion, it's very effective. He doesn't always have the substance to back it up.
And is that important? Because in all of this conversation, I suppose you can only ever put some lipstick on... I'm reaching for a metaphor here that I thought would be rude about certain politicians, but substance matters as well as style.
It does, but nearly all politicians that I've worked with benefit with a specific process which leads to precise material and then a perfect performance. Actually, no, I'll rephrase that. There's no such thing as a perfect performance. I'd say you can lead up always to a powerful performance if you've got the right presentation preparation structure.